when you are really free, it's not just about free to choose, I don't know, strawberry cake or cheesecake. It means, for example, fighting for freedom. And there you don't have the same choice. Fighting for freedom means I have to sacrifice maybe my life. I have to do something, although I am afraid of it, but basically I have no choice. I couldn't live with myself if I don't do it. In politics, freedom means to act freely within the frame of existing customs and legal regulations. But there are times when to be truly free means you have to violate the sphere of what is legally permitted. And finally, while we are free to circulate in the digital universe, does this freedom not give birth to a non-transparent universe prone to manipulations? You are as free as you can imagine. You surf along the web, you do whatever you want, but the more you do it, the more you experience how manipulated and controlled you are. I will not try to provide clear answers to all these questions. I would just try to bring out the complexity of freedom. So the first empirical observation with which I want to begin is that freedom can unite us. A whole nation can be united in a struggle for freedom. It can unite us, but at the same time, each of us has in his or her head a different concrete notion of freedom. For example, a country fights against the aggression for freedom. We are all united, we shout freedom, we are ready to die for our freedom. But it's easy to see upon a closer look that each of us means something different by it. So the best example from art of this paradox is, for me, the finale of the first act of Mozart's opera Don Giovanni, where the hero, Don Giovanni, invites his guests to a big reception and greets them with triumphant opening, Viva la libertà, long live freedom. And they all joined. They are all from different strata. Poor peasants, other noblemen, and so on. It's an emphatic moment which, as it were, stops the development of the opera. They're all transfixed. But it's clear that they don't have the same idea of freedom. Now, my point here is not simply that this is a confusion. No, such moments of emphatic identification with freedom have their own efficiency. Such freedom is not just an illusion. It's illusion with real effects. They all really fight for freedom. From my own experience, I remember how here in Slovenia, when we were under much more modest than now in Ukraine, but nonetheless, aggression from the Yugoslav army, we were also all for freedom. But immediately after we achieved independence, it was clear that each group had its own idea of freedom. For the church, freedom was freedom to get back all our possessions, freedom to organize ourselves as a central social power. For new capitalists, it was again freedom from capitalist expansion. For new leftists, it was a different thing, and so on and so on. Be careful how in every epoch, and also within the same epoch, with different strata of or states, freedom means something different, as I already indicated. In pre-modern times, when people lived in a traditional way of life, freedom simply meant the freedom to live the way they were used to live, the freedom to follow their traditions without disturbance. In modernity, freedom became freedom of commerce, abstract legal freedom. For socialists, freedom is the freedom that has to be guaranteed by certain social rights. Freedom is only actually possible, again, with healthcare, with guaranteeing minimal standard of living, free education, and so on and so on. And also today, the typical freedom today is the freedom of choice, which is often a false freedom, because the choices you are given are very limited. Like, it's a little bit like, yes, you have the freedom between Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola, but what if you want something more radically different? But my point here is that this is the reason that maybe the deepest ingredient of freedom is the very gap between abstract notion of freedom and concrete content of freedom. It is very good for you to experience that your concrete notion of freedom is not universal. When you become aware of this, that your concrete content of freedom, what freedom means to you, is limited, this precisely gives you the freedom to change the very contours of what freedom is for you.